All right, so this is solving one variable two-step equations. We know that a variable is something that can change. A variable is the letter itself, X or Y or R or whatever it may be. Okay. Anytime somebody thinks of algebra, they think of a variable or they think of a letter, which is a variable. Okay, so two-step equations meaning we may have to add and then divide or something like that. So it's going to take two steps, okay? So let's first look at what the goal is. Here's the goal right here. The goal is to get the variable isolated. So if we think about what it's like to be isolated, if you ever go to ISS, you are isolated from the public, I guess. You are sent somewhere to be by yourself, okay? And so we want to isolate the variable. Means we want to get that letter by itself, okay? And we are going to solve all of these equations by using the inverse operation. Inverse is just a big word for opposite, okay? That's really it. We want to get the letter by itself by doing the opposite operations, okay? We always want to just completely leave the letter alone and get it by itself, okay? Because that's what it wants. It's had a bad day, I guess, okay? And also it's similar to, think about a balance, right? Let me see if I can step back a little bit. So if we have a balance, right, we've got some, and we're in science, we got some stuff on this side, and we got some stuff on that side, right? So we always want to keep it balanced. So if we take like something away from this side of the scale or the balance, whatever it's called, and if we want it to stay balanced, you've got to take the same thing away from here, okay? So let's look at just these examples right here. Like example 1, x minus 7 equals 20. So what minus 7 equals 20? That's an easy question. We know the answer to that, okay? We can just do that in our head, but we're not always going to have them like that. All right, so what I like to do is I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this problem. You do not have to do that if you don't want to. But I'm going to do x minus 7 equals 20. So first, what's the variable? The x is the variable. We want to get the variable by itself, okay? So I also want to think of it as a balance, and the center of the balance is right here on the equal sign. So here's the center of my balance. So if we take something from that side, we have to do the exact same thing to the other, okay? So right now it's balanced, right? That thing would be sitting just like this, sitting perfectly balanced. Okay, we want to get the x by itself, this guy right here. There's also a minus 7. How do you get rid of a minus 7? Just do the opposite, right? We want it to be at 0 by doing the inverse. So we would just add 7. So think about that. If you add 7 to that side, what's going to happen? It's going to be out of balance. So you have to add 7 things to both. So we would do plus 7. So now a negative 7 and a positive 7 just equals 0, doesn't it? Doesn't that just equal 0? So now we just have x equals 20 plus 7, which is 27. Okay? All right? So there's two ways to think about it. Use that balance. That's the way that I like it. We can look at it on example 2. So there's the balance. It's perfectly balanced right there as a scale. I don't know what it's called in science. And we want to get that variable by itself. Okay, so t plus 14 equals 29. Well, that t, we want it all alone because we actually want to find out what its value is. All right, so how can we get rid of a plus 14? If we want it to go away, you would do a minus 14. Okay, and just like in fractions or just about any other thing in math, if you do it to one side, then you also have to do it to the other. So think about that balance. If you take away from one side, you have to take away from the other. Okay, so now the t is all by itself, and 29 minus 14 is 15. Okay, So what I want you to do is I want you to write the rest of the notes, all right? And there's 2 pages, I know. There's that one, so you can pause it right now, all right? And then there's a second page right there. Okay, now these are actual 2-step equations that we have to solve, okay, find the solution to. All right, and we're going to get more practice on the assignment. Okay, so pause that, get that written, and then I will bring the assignment up. All right, here's the assignment. It's I think it's called a maze or something. So I'll give you a heads up right now. It says a maze, right? And you solve a problem and then you follow the answer, but you end up doing every single problem on here. So there's no reason to even follow the maze part of it. Just you got to do the whole page. Okay. All right. So these are all 2-step equations. Okay. One variable, 2-step equations. So let's look at this first one. The variable is x, right? All right. So let's draw that balance right down the middle. So right now, it's perfectly balanced, right? And so we want to get that x or that variable by itself, right there, by doing inverse operations. Remember, whatever we do to one side, we have to do to the other. We have to keep it balanced, okay? So let's get that x by itself. 4x plus 10 equals negative 26. We're going to deal with the variable last, all right? So always deal with the constant, meaning just the number first. So that is a plus 10, right? What's the opposite of plus 10? Minus 10. Okay? So think about a balance. So we just took something off of this side, right? So if we take something off, doesn't that mean it's going to tilt the other way and be heavy on the other side? So what that means is we have to do the same thing to the other to keep it balanced. So if you do minus 10 on one side, you got to do it to the other side. All right, so now we have 4x equals negative 36. All right, so let's look at this 4x. What does 4x mean? It means 4 times something, right? We just don't know what the something is. That's what the x is. That's the variable. So we always do the inverse, always do the opposite. So if 4x means 4 times x, what's the opposite of multiplying by 4? The opposite of multiplying by 4 is dividing by 4. Okay? And remember, we've talked about this all year. That line, which we've thought was a fraction our whole life, really just means to divide. Okay? So if we divide one side of the scale by 4, what do we have to do to the other? We have to also divide it by 4. So if we look at this, what is 4 divided by 4? It would be 1x, right? So you could write it like that if you wanted to. 1x. And then let's look at negative 36 divided by positive 4. A negative divided by a positive. You got to think of those signs. So our answer is going to be negative. When signs are different, they're negative. And 36 divided by 4 is 9. Okay? So I want to show you this. You do not have to put that 1. Okay? So it's really just x equals negative 9. All right? So hey, let's go to the next one. I'm going to change colors. And so this looks crazy, right? It looks crazy difficult. X over 3. It's a fraction, right? X over 3 plus 10 equals 15. It's not a fraction. This one is not a fraction. What does it mean? Well, first, let's go ahead and do this, right? Let's get our balance on there. What does this mean? We've talked and talked and talked. I've mentioned it all year long. This line means to divide, right? That's just x divided by 3. Okay? So here's our balance. Whatever we do to one side, we got to do to the other. Deal with the variable last. Deal with the letter last. Get rid of your constants first. Okay? So we've got plus 10 over there. We need to get rid of that. X wants to be by itself. So we have to do the opposite of plus 10, which is minus 10. If we do something to one side of a balance, we have to do it to the other. So we got to do minus 10 on the same one, on the other side. So now we have x over 3 equals 15 minus 10 is 5, right? Okay? So x over 3 means what? X divided by 3. We're always doing the inverse, always doing the opposite. What's the opposite of dividing by 3? Multiplying by 3 is the opposite. So we have to do that to both sides. Multiply by 3 on both sides. Okay? So yes, these do cancel out, and you end up with just an x, believe it or not, and 5 times 3 is 15. So how could we check that? We could check that by saying x is equal to 15, right? So go to the beginning of the problem and put a 15 in there for that x. And then let's just do it. What's 15 divided by 3? It's 5, right? 5. 5 plus 10. Does that equal 15? Yes, it does. Algebra. Alright, so I'm going to go through, we're going to do these pink ones together. So I'm going to try to get 4 more done in 4 minutes. Okay? Alright, so here we go. Let's look at this first one. It is 9 minus 2x equals 35. I'm going to draw that line. Okay? The variable is x right there. I'm going to deal with that last. So I have a positive 9, right? How do I get rid of a positive 9? By subtracting 9. Okay? Take 9 away from both sides. So 9 and negative 9 is 0. So now I have negative 2x equals 35 minus 9, which is 26. Okay? Negative 2x, that just means multiplying by negative 2. What's the opposite of multiplying by negative 2? Dividing by negative 2. Both sides. Remember, whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So 26 divided by a negative 2. The answer is going to be negative because signs are different. And 26 divided by 2 is 13. Okay? This next one, 2/3 x plus 15 equals 17. So that is 2/3. That's just a number. Okay, so I'm going to draw my balance. X is the variable. That's what we want to get by itself. This plus 15, we want to move first by doing the opposite, which is minus 15. Minus 15. So now we have 2/3 x equals 17 minus 15, which is 2. What's the opposite of multiplying by 2/3? That's multiplying, remember? The opposite of multiplying by 2/3 is dividing by 2/3. Okay? So we're going to do both sides divided by 2/3. Okay? So now this right here, we've got to remember kind of far back, we don't divide fractions. Okay? We've got x here equals, we don't divide. Instead, we would do 2/1. We don't divide, we multiply the reciprocal. Reciprocal is 3/2. Some of you may remember keep, change, flip. Notice how it all comes back. Okay, we have to remember everything. Alright, so now x equals 2 times 3, which is 6, and 1 times 2, which is 2. So really, it's just 6 divided by 2, which is 3. Okay, x equals 3. Alright, let's go to this one right here. Negative 5x minus 10. So I'm going to draw that line, have my balance. Want to get the variable or the x by itself by doing inverse operations. So we've got a minus 10. What's the opposite of minus 10? Plus 10. Both sides. You got to do it to both sides, right? So negative 5x equals 10 plus 10, which is 20. Negative 5x means dividing by negative 5, or excuse me, multiplying by negative 5. We're going to do the opposite and divide both sides by negative 5. So that is x equals a negative 4. And this one down here, it's 5 minus x equals 12. Draw that line, right? The variable is the x. The constant is 5. The opposite of 5 is minus 5. Do it to both sides. So negative x equals 12 minus 5, which is 7. So remember at the beginning I said we could put a 1 here. Negative 1x means multiply by negative 1, right? What's the opposite of multiplying by negative 1? Dividing by negative 1. So x equals 7 divided by